We tested Flipper's 900 DC model earlier this year and we liked it a great deal. Really good performance boat, really good looking boat. It was kind of a modern take on what the Nordic day cruiser is all about, but at the same time it still felt relatively traditional. Well, this is the 900 ST, the 900 Sport Top, the only Sport Top model in the Flipper range and the sister boat to that 900 DC. Now, as you can see, this is not a classical open Nordic day cruiser. We've got a proper structure here, big side panels, one-piece glass to give you proper views. We also got an enormous sunroof in there, soft top sunroof that retracts right back to give you open boating sensations, if not the authentic open boating experience. Now, plainly, with that big structure, it's not quite as sexy a boat as the 900 DC, and it was never going to be, but they've done a pretty good job, I think. As I say, those one-piece side windows, we've also got little stylistic devices here, like this, little tinted panels, nice moulded angles. It's quite a cool looking boat by Sport Top standards. When we get to the bow, things are actually relatively classical day cruiser. We've got the anchor mounted up here. As you can see, this is not a plumb bow by any means, so there's not much room in that locker for anything except your anchor chain, your anchor line. We've got a raised sunbed here though, which suggests good things about the accommodation down below. And even though those cushions, they're covering up a couple of hatches under there, as you can see, which threatens to make it quite dark down below, but we do have these as well on either side, a small skylight and a larger skylight there. They look cool and they ought to do good things down below. Now let's walk a little further aft. As you can see, the cleats are kept well out of the way of these little side decks here, and as you're making your way forward and aft along this boat, you've got lots of easy access to rooftop guardrails. I've been up and down there a few times this morning and it's very easy indeed. You don't feel at all insecure or concerned about the operation. And back here, before we jump on board, as you can see, we've got a pair of Mercury 225s. Now, you can have 200s or 250s or even 300s. Apparently with the 225s, it's achieving around about 40 knots, which is pretty much perfect for a family boat like this. But if you go for the maximum option, 300s, it'll apparently be capable of 52 knots. So that's quite a thing. And let's step on at this starboard side and immediately take a look at this, because this is a really attractive feature. This is what the DC lacks, and not just physically but in terms of its concept, because the DC, as I say, is relatively traditional. There's nothing traditional about this. As you can see, we've got this aft platform here that can be hinged up on these struts so you can trim the engines out, and then further forward, if I lift this section here, we have another lid. We'll lift that, we'll open up this door and we'll climb down in here, because I just love this. Now this is a really cool space. As you can see, there's a little dip in the centre of this cabin where you can put your feet so you can sit up with decent headroom. I mean, I'm a 6-footer, my hair's just touching the fiberglass, it's perfectly comfortable. There's obviously an infill, we can grab that, pop that into the space, and then we've got a really good size of bed. If I lie myself full length with my head back here at the port side, well, it's genuinely huge. By any standard, it's very accommodating indeed. There's no space for storage beneath here. We've got the domestic batteries forward, we've got the starter batteries for those outboards aft, but this is a really generous size of space. You can sit here at the head end. We've got natural light from this window, plus a couple of spotlights and some heating vents there to keep you comfortable. We've also got USB points in here. So it's not just an afterthought, it's not just a cavity where you chuck the kids. This is a proper cabin. I prefer blinds rather than curtains here because it just feels a bit more pared back and modern to me. It's a really impressive space. And arguably the most impressive thing about it is the window at the transom. a big window facing aft for fantastic views of the water and of those engines. Now this is obviously built and designed, I would think, for children to use, but it's certainly big enough for adults. And actually, if I were cruising with my missus and my 2 kids, I'd be inclined to give the kids the forward cabin and to claim this one for myself, partly because I like that kind of camping vibe, and partly because I'd feel more secure about having them up in the bow and me aft at the access point to the boat. Now if I can just tear myself away from this aft cabin and move towards the cockpit, you'll see that this is entirely different to the DC model. What we have here is a big port dinette. As you can see at the forward end, we take advantage of all that length to generate a proper dinette that you can actually use as a third double berth. Just drop this into the space. It's got a telescopic leg and additional legs on either end, so you can use those as struts, use the infill, and sleep 6. But I have to say, as I've been walking about this boat, there have been infills here, there and everywhere, and there doesn't seem to be anywhere specific to store these things, which is a bit of a bugbear of mine. I do think on these modern boats, particularly modern Nordic cruise-ready boats, there ought to be pretty much a space for everything, so that is a bit aggravating to me. Nonetheless, it's a useful feature, the ability to sleep 6 people on a boat of this scale. And if I bend down here, you'll see that we also have some handy storage bins. Every little bit of space is used. This one's used for the canvases, so we can just erect those, zip those onto the aft end of that hard top, sport top I should say, to cocoon yourself off in this cockpit from the elements. But I didn't mention it earlier, what's really nice here is this overhead sunroof. If I move back to give you a sense of perspective, you'll see it's absolutely vast. So if you really want to get that open boating sensation, this is a very impressive way to do it. I think the button is just here, there we are. You'll see it simply slides aft. As you'd expect, it takes a little while. It's a big unit. But once that's done, just look at the scale of this aperture. If I move back down in here, all the way from the screen rim, way aft, to that bench seat. And it totally changes the dynamic of this boat. As I say, you wouldn't call it open particularly. And there are no options for opening side windows here. These solid panels are all you get. So it remains significantly less open than the DC model, but it's certainly not a bad effort, I have to say. Let's move this homeless infill out of the way and take a look down there. Now, as you'll see, we have additional storage there, plus a slide-out Dometic fridge and a larger fridge built into the leading edge of that dinette. And that frees up the galley on the starboard side for extra storage and the basic essentials. Now this confused me a little at first, but the runner gives you a little clue. The idea is that you release this little catch and then shunt this sideways and out it goes. So we've got a work surface that extends aft, and that reveals your sink and your 2-ring induction hob. Now of course, if you need to use this companionway, it's not possible while this work surface is in place, but presumably when you open this all out, everyone will be in the cockpit, you'll be at anchor, you'll be looking to take advantage of the galley and do some eating, some drinking, some relaxing. So it does make a bit of sense, and it's very easy once you're done, simply to slide it back into place. Now, we've been looking at a little bit of the storage. There's additional storage down here beneath the deck. And if I open that up, it's a very generous size of lid, so you expect great things. And when we get in there, you'll see that actually there's not a lot to it particularly, because this little hatch here gives you access to your fuel tank, and that is access to your water tank. So a little bit of storage, but not a lot. And also I should point out that, like the hatch further aft, there are no retaining struts for this. You have to hold it manually to stop it slamming on your toes. So it'd be good to see some rams in there. Let's shut that back up and have another little peek at the hatch ahead of that. That's more like it. A proper lined locker. Now, having complained that not everything has its place on this boat, it's good to see on the starboard side that we do actually have a dedicated basket for your fenders. Worth noting before we head up to the helm, which actually is quite a strength on this boat. As I say, with that roof back, it feels relatively open, I have to say. And we also have, in spite of the fact we have a pair of decent side decks, we also have a step-through screen there to get up onto the bow if you find it's a little bit bumpy and you don't trust those side decks. So that's a nice little touch. You don't see that on many boats, a step-through screen and some side decks on both sides. But let's swing that chair back into position. As I say, we've got space for two on the port side, plus a little grab handle and an additional lid on the dash top. It's pretty featureless, just a little trough for your knickknacks. And the helm position itself, elevated, is really quite impressive. Quite simple too. We've got switch gear, a USB point. We've got the bow thruster, the trim tabs and the throttles on the right hand side where you want them, plus a little armrest which is really comfortable, perfectly positioned, and a cup holder lower down. There's good adjustability as well in this seat and in that wheel. And because we have a slightly elevated footrest here, if I stand up on there, look at that, this is my eye line as a 6-footer. You get fantastic views for stand-up helming. And right enough, on my right shoulder we do have this substantial fiberglass trough with the runners for that enormous sunroof in it. But it doesn't get critically in the way. It's not uncomfortable. And again, on the dash top, we have a big trough, this time with a wireless phone charger. We also have a handy little storage net down below, and on the main dash panel a couple of 12-inch plotters. I reckon on the basis of the scale of that you could probably spec 16 inches if you wanted them. It's an impressive station. In fact, the only thing to criticise, I would think, is visibility here, which is a touch restricted because of those big fiberglass mouldings on the starboard side. As you can see though, visibility elsewhere is very, very good indeed. What will be particularly interesting though is how this sport top model manages the front end, because of course the day cruiser had a cabin in the V of the bow and then an additional 1.5 man bed slotted beneath this starboard section of the cockpit. I don't think we're going to get that there because of course we have that big double at the aft end, but what we do get is a very spacious double in the V of the bow. Very much a tapered bow, of course, as you can see, so you have to sleep with your head aft. That's not a problem at all. You don't particularly want big slab-sided voluminous hulls on proper sporting Nordic weekenders like this. It's nicely appointed. We don't get any light, of course, because we've still got those cushions up on that foredeck, but those little skylights I pointed out earlier do a great job of introducing natural light down below. And we have some quite long panoramic low profile windows there, one on either side. Beneath the aft section of bed, again, storage is very well taken care of here. Individual compartments. Decent rams, though they don't quite hold up that hinged mattress if you let it go. And extra storage and cup holders and a fusion remote. It's a very comfortable space. If I move back a little and look to the port side, we have the heads compartment, and this really is a good size. Really generous sink, lots of mirrors, a window there with ventilation, and again on the port side there's that aft skylight, a little one. Makes a big difference, even though it's compact. Here's the toilet on the aft bulkhead, and we do have a fold-down lid to sit on top of that. There we are, that's how that works. So you can take a shower using this and use it as a wet room. What I really like here though is this. A handy extra bit of storage for whatever you like, your toothbrush, your toilet rolls. It's very handy. How often do you see that in the heads compartment on a boat of this scale? Let's shut that up and spin around, because on the starboard side this is where access to the low-level 1.5 man bed would have been on the day cruiser model, but here we have a changing bench with decent headroom plus a really good storage locker in here, That's absolutely vast. So they have made that space work for them pretty well. So there we have it. When we tested that 900 DC, as I say, we enjoyed it very much, but it felt just a touch traditional. And I remember specifically talking about the ST during that sea trial, because I kind of hankered after something a little bit more adventurous on that same highly dynamic sporting platform, and this is it. And I'm pretty impressed with it. Now, of course, it's not as sexy, not as good looking as the Day Cruiser. Seamanship duties are not as simple, and it's not as open. But given that it costs pretty much the same price, I would say it has the beating of it in pretty much every other regard.